seemed like everybody else was making money except for me. So my doubt was like, maybe I'm too young, or maybe these sellers are too hard, or maybe these attorneys are really going to always kill the deal. This business, if you just give it your all and you commit and you study your craft and you master it, it can give you the life of your dreams.
How did you become a millionaire in 7 years?
It's understanding fear.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for today's episode of Real Estate Disruptors. Today we have Greg Helbeck with Velocity House Buyers. And Greg flew in from Reno, Nevada to talk about how you become a millionaire before the age of 27. When I started, I want to become a millionaire before 30. You did it by 27. That's incredible. Guys, I'm on a mission to create 100 millionaires. The information on the show alone is enough to help you become a millionaire in the next 5 to 7 years. If you'll take consistent action, you will become one. And the show is brought to you by our sister company, InvestorLift. Get access to millions of cash buyers across the country. Go to investorlift.com, put in Disruptors to get 10% off. And guys, if you get value today, please hit that subscribe button. That way we can all grow together. Ready to go?
Ready to go.
All right. First question is, what was your life like right before you got into real estate?
Wow. It's crazy because that was like 8 years ago now. I started when I was 20, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was in college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was getting off of a failed hockey career. I wanted to play in the NHL, and that didn't work out. But I was in community college living with my parents in their basement, honestly. It's kind of like one of those, infomercials, like, oh, he was in his basement, and now he's a real estate millionaire.
Yeah.
But
working in his mom's basement. I mean, that's
working
something
in
we
my
talk
mom's
about.
basement, man.
Yeah.
So I was in community college. I remember I got into reading books towards the end of my hockey career.
Mhm.
And, I read this book called Elite Minds by Stan Beecham. It's like super under the radar book.
Yeah. Never heard of
It
it.
got me into like the mind and, psychology and all that stuff and mindset. And then read Rich Dad Poor Dad, as most of the guests probably have.
Right.
And he talked about real estate. And I knew you could make money in real estate. I knew like a lot of people were wealthy through real estate, but I never really figured it out. I never wanted to be a realtor. I didn't really know how to go about it. But then I started listening to podcasts because I had a side job cutting lawns and doing weed whacking, kind of like a contractor scenario.
Yeah.
And I remember I'd listen to these podcasts and the guy was talking about, it was actually Matt Theriault, Epic Real Estate Investing.
Yeah.
Popular.
Very popular.
And then Sean Terry I'd listen to.
Right.
And they were talking about wholesaling and, doing double closings. And then, it started to make some sense. And then I went to a seminar. It was like one of those pitch seminars. And they were like, you can wholesale houses with no money. You can use the buyer's money. They came to Newburgh, where I was living, like near where I was living at the time. And me and my buddy Devin went to the seminar with our other friend, Kevin. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, it's real estate. Because I remember Rich Dad Poor Dad talked about it. And then I looked at both of them and I was like, I don't care what you guys are doing. I'm signing up for like the next level training because it was a pitch fest. And they said you can take somebody for free. So why don't we see if we can do a 3-for-1 deal? Because we already have the 2-for-1 deal. Kevin was like, I'm not doing it. Devin was like, I'll do it with you. We signed up for that seminar, and then the rest is history.
Where were you playing hockey at?
Playing in Massachusetts. So I was playing up in the Boston area.
Is that where you grew up?
No, I grew up in New York.
Grew up in
New York City area.
Okay. And then you went to Boston to play hockey?
Went to Boston to play hockey for a year and a half.
Okay.
And then I literally, I'm not a big quitter of things, but I knew that was a complete waste of time because I knew like the level I was playing at, the odds of me playing D1 hockey at that level were really low. And I was just burning my parents' money.
And you were in community college at this time? Or?
After I got done with hockey, I went to community college locally.
Okay. So you were playing D1, or you're trying to get into D1?
I was trying to get to D1.
What's before D1?
Junior hockey.
Junior hockey.
Which is like after high school. It's like high school, junior hockey, and then college.
Oh, gotcha. I wasn't aware of that. Okay.
Yeah, it's a whole system in hockey.
Yeah.
The younger you are, the better, but I was old because I was like 19.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like kind of one of the older guys, and like all the really good kids are like 18, 19. And I was like, this is just, I literally packed my stuff up and drove home. I called my mom in Connecticut. I was like, hey, I'll be home in 2 hours. Like, I'm done.
Right.
And she was like, oh. I was like, yeah, I'm out of here. This is a waste of time.
Right.
And she was like, okay, honey, I'll see you in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Crazy.
So you go to the seminar and you sign up.
Yeah.
How much was the seminar?
$2,000.
$2,000.
It was $1,000 each.
So $1,000 each to attend, or
to attend, yeah. To go
and
to
then the
seminar.
upsell was
that was like $50,000. So it was a free seminar, and then we paid the $2,000
for the elite
each.
training.
Yeah, for the elite training.
That's a steal.
It was a great deal. Yeah, they taught you everything too. But then they were like, if you need hands-on coaching, and then they get you to raise your credit card limits. It's like the whole thing. I think that model's kind of going away now, which I don't really believe in. But the next one was like $50,000, and then I was thinking about it, and I was like, Devin was like, nah, dude, like we don't need to do that. Like we just gotta go out and like.
So you say the rest is history. And this is 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So you take this information, you go to the next level of training. Talk to me about how you got your first deal.
Oh my God. That seems like so long ago.
Mhm.
So my first deal was from a bandit sign.
Yeah.
So I had no money when I started. Like, I spent basically half the money in my bank account to go to the seminar. So I was
Mhm.
left with $1,000. I had to sell my car, bought a cheaper car. I had to like, kind of
You had a lot of
scour.
skin in the game.
Yes, I did. And a lot of time invested. But
Yeah.
the one marketing channel, at least back in the day, that worked well was bandit signs because they were cheap. I'd put them out myself. I'd put them out every weekend consistently. I would never miss. I'd take them, or I'd put them out on Friday night, take them out on Sunday afternoon.
Mhm.
So they'd be out for like 48 hours. And then I would get calls, right? And I was getting these leads pretty cheap because I was just my time back then.
Right.
Right. And I remember we got a call from a lady in Poughkeepsie and she was like, yeah, I want to sell. My daughter's living in the property. There's like, some sketchy stuff going on in there.
Mhm.
And I was like, I think this is a motivated seller. Cause like the training's like, you got to deal with motivated sellers. And I
Right.
did not know what a motivated seller was.
Yeah.
So I, spoke with her and this is where a lot of new investors screw up. I reached out to people in my market at the time who were bigger than me. And there was this one guy, Dave Brown. His website was ranked #1. So I called him. This is before I had that lead. And I was like, hey, I'm new, like kind of like the typical thing. I'm new. Is there anything I can do to help you? Like I'm trying to get my first deal. So him and I like formed a relationship and I helped him with some of his leads. But then when I got this lead, I was like, hey, can we partner on this deal? Like I have the seller. She wants to sell pretty cheap. You have a buyer we can split this on. And he found a buyer. So we locked the deal up. So New York is like a really hard market.
Yes, it is.
Like very hard market, like especially like the lower Hudson Valley and Long Island. It's very, very competitive and it's expensive. So I didn't have money for earnest money deposit. So he put up the earnest money deposit. He dealt with the contract. He dealt with the attorney, and we split $10,000.
Nice.
And I had a check for $5,000.
Mhm.
So I went back to my parents, and I was like, because they saw me working my tail off, and they didn't see any money. I was basically paying to work.
Right.
Right. So they were like, oh, like I hope this works out, Greg. Like if it doesn't work out, you can get a job. And I'm like, I'm not getting a job. I like refused to get a job. I was like I was doing like Gary V garage selling on the weekends to like have some extra money. Split that deal, $5,000, $5,000. I brought them a check. I was like, hey, this works. Another deal came up like 2 months later for another $5,000. But like the mistake I was making in the beginning, which is I guess a good mistake, is I was kind of just going to like a couple buyers and like spoon feeding them deals. And they'd pay me whatever they wanted. Like if it was $5,000, great. If it was $10,000, great. Like I had no leverage. I didn't have money for deposits because New York, you can't just lock a deal up with a seller. You have to like get an attorney involved, and it's like you have to put a big deposit down. So they helped me like in that difficult market, kind of get the first few deals under my belt.
Yeah.
But I knew after some time, I'm like, I can't hit my goals if I'm like dependent on these buyers. So I need to figure out how to do this, without relying on a buyer,
Right.
putting the deposit down.
So, bandit signs, getting calls. I mean, how was that first deal? Was it a layup basically after you got it locked up?
It was a
Okay.
complete layup. Like the lady sold me the house super cheap, no resistance, no objections.
Yeah.
It was like, couldn't have asked for the better, like this seller. Like I
All right.
wish I could clone this seller nowadays because we'd be doing this show from the back of a yacht or something. It just doesn't work like that.
So then, what was your next deal?
Next deal was actually from another bandit sign in Westchester County, which is even harder than where I'm from. That's like an hour south. And that was from a bandit sign. That was not a layup. That seller was pretty sophisticated. Like a lot of these people in Westchester, like they might be motivated, but they're educated, right? So like we had to get an attorney involved there in Westchester, and he was having issues with wholesale, so we had to like sneak the assignment in and like convince the attorney that we're still going to close and like put like $10,000 down. So I ultimately made $5,000 wholesaling that house too from another bandit sign. So like the ROI on the bandit sign was great.
Right.
But then I was like, all right, I can't just rely on these bandit signs because I don't really know when the calls are going to come in. But I had no money for like a direct mail company, so I would just buy lists from the county and I would handwrite the letters myself, and that's how I got my third deal. It was $15,000.
Nice.
It was a handwritten letter. Like I would literally handwrite the yellow letters, and then I realized that was inefficient. So then I bought a printer. I'd mail merge the printed letters, and then I would mail merge the the envelopes. So then all I had to do was lick the stamps, which is not a good use of time now, and seal the envelopes. But like that worked super well back in 2016.
Did you see the company on the right when you walked through the front door?
Probably walked by them. I didn't see them though.
It says on the outside, it says, "Hail all the robots." Right. It's a handwritten letter company.
Really?
Yeah, I actually got a tour yesterday from the owner, and I was like, "Wow, it's incredible to watch all these handwritten letters
Crazy,
by pen."
right?
Right? It's
that
nuts.
was around back then.
Seriously,
Jeez,
although
man.
I don't know how much.
I don't know if I could have afforded it back then, man.
Yeah.
Those are probably. I mean, I was doing it personally. It was Greg's handwriting. Yeah,
So,
in the beginning.
How did you continue? I guess. Well, what would have happened because you were saying there's no way in heck you're getting a job. You're going to do the garage sale, Gary Vee thing forever.
Yeah.
What would happen if you never got your first deal?
Honestly, I would have stuck it out until I got my first deal. But to answer your question, I would have probably just continued buying and selling stuff at yard sales.
Yeah.
Because eventually, like the garage selling stuff was cool, but then I started figuring out I could go like lowball people for AC units, like window units, and make a better margin on that. I probably would have tried to scale that. Yeah, I mean, I just like figured, like I remember there's a couple funny stories, but like the first one, this guy, I remember I drove to Poughkeepsie, which is where the first deal was, in the hood, like bad neighborhood by myself, like kind of when it's getting dark out in the summer. Picked up this AC unit for like $50, resold it for like $250. So like I netted $200, and I was like, man, what if I did 2 of these a day?
Yeah.
Right. So I started doing more of that stuff. And like there was like the standing units. I knew those were good margins, and people would just give these away. Like it's ridiculous. And then one time I was at a garage sale. This guy had an Anderson window just sitting by the trash. And I was like, hey, you're just throwing that out? And he's like, yeah. I was like, can I just have it? And he's like, sure. Sold that for like $100. So I started to realize like these windows and
what's an Anderson window?
It's a really high end window.
Okay.
Like if you see like a nice house, usually there's Anderson windows in it. Like really good finishes. I don't put those in my rehabs.
Gotcha.
They're too expensive.
I see.
Yeah.
So you saw a pane of glass or a window, and you're like,
easy $100. There's $100 in the garbage can. I was like, this guy, unbelievable. Just giving it away.
Did you have any doubts along the way?
Yeah, the biggest doubt I had was like I would consume these podcasts when I would drive around and put bandit signs out and write the letters, and it seemed like everybody else was making money except for me. Like I'd hear one guy in Virginia do a wholesale deal for 30 grand, and then this guy in Pennsylvania would do one for 20 grand, and I was like, all these other people are doing this, but I have not done this yet. So my doubt was like, well, maybe it doesn't work in New York, or maybe I'm too young, or maybe these sellers are too hard, or maybe these attorneys are really going to always kill the deal. And it took like, 9 to 12 months of just grit and persistence. And like in the beginning of any business, you don't have momentum. So it's very hard to like have consistency because you have no momentum or experience. Like I had no business experience. I was a kid out of college.
Right.
I didn't understand KPIs and numbers, and like it was just kind of like all just going out and taking action and, hopefully getting a deal whenever that came, and it ended up taking 9 months.
But the 9 months definitely, I mean, that's a significant amount of time. Do you think that book you're talking about, Elite Minds?
Yeah.
Do you think that helped?
It did, because it taught you about beliefs and like false beliefs and true beliefs. And a lot of people have false beliefs. So like I would let these false beliefs creep into my head that like it wouldn't work. But then I realized it was just a limiting belief. And obviously if all these other people, like the big thing I realized at the seminar was like, if all these other people can do it, clearly there's like a market for this. Like it clearly works. But in the beginning, it was like, why would someone sell their house below market value? Like that didn't compute in my mind. I'm like, why would someone do that? Like you have a house worth $300K, you're going to sell it for $150. It doesn't make sense. But then I realized after, 8 years, like this happens on the daily.
All the time.
All the time.
I don't know if you heard any about the call I had a moment ago. Right? So we're talking about installment method, right?
Yeah, I heard that.
And the lady was like, well, why would anyone ever do this? Why wouldn't they just list with a realtor? It's like, I don't know. Why does anyone sell their house to cash buyers? I can't explain to you why people sell their house for cash buyers.
Or like a novation.
Or novation, right? It's like how do I pitch this? Same exact way you pitch a novation.
Same
so
thing.
It's like, why would someone do this instead of listing? It's like, I can't tell you, right? I can tell you I would never do this.
Yeah, I would never sell my house at a discount.
Right, I would never sell my house to cash buyer. Greg can call me. I'm not selling my house for cash, right?
Never.
We have BJ Gramillion. He moved to Tennessee recently, but he used to live out here.
Yeah.
And we're both in Collective Genius together, right? And one day I get a postcard from him, and I posted it inside that Facebook group. I was like, hey, BJ, thanks for, but I don't need to sell my house for cash.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
That's funny. I'm on those lists too. I'm on the absentee owner list on some rental properties, and I'm like, why are they mailing me?
Right.
Like my good buddy Ken in Delaware, who's in CG.
Yeah.
I got a postcard from him about a flip he did in Pennsylvania. And I'm like, Ken, man, can I speak to your marketing department? Why? And I just bought that property. We flipped it. Right. So it's like, you never know.
You never know. So, but yeah, the belief, like no one would ever sell the house for cash. And I had the same journey as well.
Yep.
Right. I used to believe when I was wearing my realtor hat.
Oh, yeah. That's a tough belief if you have a realtor hat on.
Right.
Yeah.
Like these people, like we're lowballing these people. We're taking advantage of people. Like that's the realtor hat. And like no one will ever take less. And then it really took a couple of homeowners like, I want you to give me cash now. It's like, really? You'd rather have cash now than like more money? Like after a few of those, like, okay.
They're out there.
I am putting my own beliefs and projecting it onto somebody else.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that because there's so many homeowners where like back when I did the acquisitions, like we really helped them. Yeah. They were not going to solve their problem unless somebody like me or another investor came into play, because
Right.
a lot of these people, they just can't make decisions.
Yeah.
Right. And you have to help them you got to guide them down that journey. And a lot of these sellers, like, they'll be like, if it wasn't for you guys, I would have never sold this house. Cause like, we know how to solve the title problems and buy houses with violations. And it's like, a lot of people think, yeah, just because you put your house on the market with an agent, you're going to get more money. Yeah. But the buyer is going to be picking you apart. It's not like you get this. It's like a seesaw.
Well, the best testimony I've ever gotten was a deal that I made a ridiculous amount of money on.
Yeah.
Right.
It always is the best testimonials.
It's the best, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, why was this the case?
Yeah.
Well, they had a house that they smoked heavily, husband and wife, for a long time.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, when I did the rehab, I had to paint the walls twice because the first coat of prime and paint was not enough.
Yeah.
So we had and we cleaned the vents twice.
Oh yeah, dude.
All right, so it took a second layer of prime and paint to get the smoke away. And even then, who knows for
Still
sure.
was a little,
right,
dingy in there.
But the biggest thing was that they were buying a home, their dream home on the lake.
Okay.
Right? And like them getting that dream home on the lake was contingent on them selling this house.
Yeah.
Right? But like someone else on the outside looks at it as like, oh, you took advantage of them. It's like, well, who's buying that house? Where it's like it's even hard to keep your eyes open inside the home. And then like they were able to meet their time frame to live in their dream home for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Right. So
just solve that problem for them.
Solve that problem. So what was it? When did you know that this business was real for you?
It was actually when I didn't do deals in New York, which is funny. That's like a whole nother chapter in my life. But basically, I was like kind of just getting by in New York. Didn't have enough money to move out of my parents' house. This is like 2017-ish. So like every 2 or 3 months, I'd run into a deal, make 10, 15. I was like a cash buyer employee, as Todd Toback would say. I was just like working for these cash buyers, with random compensation. And I was like, all right, New York is hard. And that's funny because that's where we do a lot of business now, like 8 years later. But I was like, what if there's another market where I didn't have to deal with it? Because the attorneys were the problem. Like they were asking for $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 down per house. And it's like, I didn't have that much money just sitting on, on the shelf to put them down. So I was like, there was 2 things. I did the first deal I did from direct mail was a vacant, tax delinquent, like distressed, inherited house. So it was inherited, vacant, and tax delinquent. And I was like, what if I just found a list that was just those 3 things and just marketed to those people? And then what if I didn't do this in New York? It was like this hypothesis I had. And I was in Investor Fuel Mastermind. And I was like, oh, Dallas seems like a good market. I didn't do any like market research. I'm like, oh, there's a lot of people in Dallas. So I started to basically cold call in Dallas in 2018. And I would this is literally what I did. Bought the tax delinquent list, used AccuZip, which isn't even a thing anymore. Now you can use like Invelo or something that's like stacking software. I'd flag all the vacants, and then I would look for like the estate of, which means it was inherited. And I would just cold call these people and lock deals up over the phone. And I met a guy at Investor Fuel who I JV with. He would sell the deal, or we would just buy it in cash because it was super cheap, because I saved some money up at the time. And that's when like I went from like barely doing a deal every other month to like 2, 3, 4, 5 deals a month consistently, virtually, without ever having to see the property. And then I moved to San Diego, and I was like, this is what I was waiting for. Like it took a long time, but like then I was like, okay, every month I know as long as I do this work, I'm going to get this many leads. We're going to make this many offers. I started to track my numbers at that point. And then there was consistency.
You talk about the stack list, which, Evo,
Yes.
batch leads.
Yeah.
I remember him doing this case study on stack leads, and it was like, I know that guy. That's Greg.
That was
right?
me.
Right. You were the case study for the stack list.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean,
I had a 6-figure deal from that. I remember that case study. Yeah. That was from the stack list.
Yeah. You want to talk about that deal?
Yeah. That was actually in New York, ironically. But basically, long story short, it was a vacant property that was inherited. He didn't have any tax issues, but he lived in like the South Jersey area. And I personally texted that guy because it was from the stack list, because I knew it was like a good prospect.
I think it was
call.
like seven
yeah.
issues with that.
Yeah,
property.
it's just like, so this super stack list. Texted the guy on my cell phone, and he like got back to me a day later. He was like, "Yeah, I'd sell that. It was my parents' house, and it was in like a really good area of New York. City's like 30 minutes away." So I remember I was in New York at that point. Like I was there for like Easter or something. I met the guy at the house, and I'll never forget this. I knew my offer, like my first offer, was going to be like 190. That was like my starting low ball, like anchor price. And I asked him, I'm like, Brian, what would you want to sell this house for? And he's like, 140. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And I didn't say, I just shut up. I was like, okay. Well, if you got that number, what would your next step be? And he's like, I can't make a decision right now. So I never gave him an offer. I was like, okay, that's fair. Let me run my numbers. I said, when do you think you're going to be able to make a decision? Because there was another decision maker. And he's like, call me on Monday. So I call him Monday. Hey, Brian, how'd that conversation go with your girlfriend? And he's like, yeah, I spoke to her. She thinks we need to get more money. I'm like, okay, what do you want to get for the house? And he's like, 185. And meanwhile, my starting price was going to be 190. I never opened my mouth. He said 185. And I'm like, all right, if I could do 185, would you be able to commit to the deal? And he's like, yeah, for sure. So I gave him exactly what he wanted. He committed to the deal. I rehabbed the house, made like $100,000 or something. And I was just like, oh my God. And that was the first time I got a hard money loan. I was like terrified to borrow money. It was like freaking me out. But at that point, I did enough deals to where I kind of knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I made 6 figures on one deal, and I had like a little, like Earl Nightingale always talks about, like you write your goal down on a card. And my goal was to make $100K like net on one house before a certain day. I think I was like 5 days late. But I remember I took it out of my wallet and I was like, oh, wow, this stuff works.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, and I remember that case study specifically because you already had a brand, right? At that time.
Yeah.
Right. So actually, before we get to that, New York.
Oh, that's a tough.
I don't know anyone that loves doing business in the state of New York. So there's Bill Alvaro. He does well.
You should get him on the show.
Oh, I mean, if he'll come out here, I've asked him multiple times.
And Jeremiah, you got to get on the show.
Jeremiah, we got to get on the show.
You got to get him on the show. Man.
Right. So we got Jeremiah, we got Billy, we got Warner Quiroga.
Yep. Good guy.
Right. So like, they're guys that do business in New York.
Yep.
And we got the twins, right? The Dropout brothers.
Yep.
Right.
They're in my market. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got people that are in New York, but I don't think they love doing business in New York. No. I think they just do business in New York.
You have to just accept it.
Or like you choose suffering, right?
Yeah. Right. The spreads are big.
The spreads are big.
Huge.
Right.
Huge spreads.
So talk to me about the challenges of doing business in New York.
So the first thing is that the seller profile is not like, because I've done business all over the country for the most part, like Midwest, South, West Coast. The profile of the seller in New York, everyone thinks they're getting scammed there. Like everyone has an attorney and everyone thinks they're getting scammed. So the sellers are.
I mean, they just is it a victim mindset? Is
not
it
a victim? They don't believe you. They think it's a scam.
They're just skeptical.
They're skeptical. They're very skeptical about anything that's not listing your house with a realtor.
So let me just kind of sidetrack this just a moment, right? So I know they're a little louder in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Right? I know this.
Yeah.
Right. And I had to like prepare myself mentally for this, right? So we're out there and we walk into a pizzeria.
In Manhattan. Okay.
Right. And I told my kids, like, hey, they're going to be a little louder.
Yeah.
And even though I knew this logically, factually, when we ordered the pizza and Coke, I was like, why is this guy yelling at me?
You should see the bagel store.
I'm a paying customer.
Yeah.
Why is he screaming at me like I'm like this low life, right?
Yeah.
So there's a different attitude.
The attitude there is skeptical. Like that's the first thing. So it's the seller profile. They're skeptical. Like they see postcards, they see Google ads. They're like, this is a scam. So you have to overcome a lot of resistance. But once you get the seller and you get them on your side and whatever, the next biggest obstacle in New York is the attorneys. So in New York, this typical way you're supposed to do it, and we sometimes do it a different way legally, but the seller gets their own attorney. They prepare the contract. So the seller's attorney prepares the contract. Then they send it to your attorney, and then you got to make sure the contract doesn't have crazy language in it. Because in New York, generally speaking, there's no inspection contingency. You get an inspection done before you buy the house. So you get an offer accepted, and then there's an inspection. So you don't even have a binding contract. So you could walk, the seller could walk. And then after the inspection, if there's issues with the house, they put it into the contract in like a addendum, and then you sign that, and then you do that before you close. So the problem in New York is that a lot of attorneys, they want 10% down. So if you're buying a house for $300,000, the standard New York thing is you put $30,000 down. So if you're a wholesaler and you're brand new,
earnest money.
Yeah, non-refundable with no inspection contingency. So like if you have to be willing to, like we get it down a lot. Like usually we do like 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, even 5,000. That's a lot, on a house. You don't really know what's going on. You got to put that deposit down. And then another thing is that the seller's attorney a lot of time will put in the contract that it's not assignable. So then you have to double close, which you can do in New York with the unbuyer's money. So that doesn't really matter. But it's just, and then you have a buyer's attorney. So like a typical New York deal, the seller has an attorney and then there's a seller. The wholesaler has an attorney and there's a wholesaler. The buyer has an attorney, there's a buyer. The hard money lender has an attorney and then there's a hard money lender. So there could be 8 people. I remember there was a deal, this was like 2 years ago. I actually went to the closing and the end buyer had the attorney with him. They were sitting next to each other. The lender was there without the attorney. No, the lender's attorney was there without the lender. And then the seller's attorney gave me the key because he thought I was buying the house, which I technically was. I double closed, and then I took the key and passed it across the table. And he goes, "Did you just flip this?" I said, "Yep." And he's like, "Oh, all right. Sounds like a plan to me." So everyone has an attorney. So it just makes the whole process very long, very complicated, and there's a real barrier to entry there. So that's why a lot of new people have a difficult time because they will get a seller to accept their offer that might be a good offer, but then they got to put 15 grand down and they don't have it.
So
that's the problem.
We had an episode part in the Disruption where RJ Bates got pissed, right? We're talking about attorneys and how they're useless. And he basically talked about how like it was a scenario, right? Seller has an attorney, buyer's attorney, he the wholesaler has his own attorney.
Yeah.
And the situation was basically one of the attorneys wanted to redline and rewrite a certain language, but he would only do it as a Word doc. And the other attorney is like, I don't send Word docs, I only send PDFs because I don't want anyone messing with my stuff.
Happens in New York.
Right?
Yep.
So he's like, they were at an impasse.
Where was the deal?
I don't know. I just know New York.
Okay, right? Somewhere, probably the city.
But legit, this was an impasse to a deal getting done.
Yeah.
Because one attorney only sends PDFs and the only attorney only receives Word docs.
I believe it.
Like
that's what happens in New York. That's why people don't like doing business there, is because you could have a 6-figure deal and the attorney could say, "Oh, this guy wants an assignment contract." Because the problem is you get an offer accepted and then you can't lock the deal up on the spot. So the seller could change their mind, but a lot of the times the problem, and thankfully I say a lot of the times, happens maybe 1 out of 10 deals. The seller, I remember we had a deal where we would have made a fortune on this thing. The seller accepted our offer. We went to go lock it up. And the attorney's like, "Dude, you can't sell this house for that price." He listed it and made another 100 grand. So it's like, it is what it is. It's just the cost of doing business. But that's the big problem in New York, is like sometimes the attorney will kill the deal before you even have a deal.
In some ways, they're worse than realtors.
Yeah, for sure. Because they think they know, and a lot of them do know a lot, but the bad ones think they know a lot. And then they give their client bad advice that really will not help them. And then the client ends up suffering. Right. So it's like, we had a deal we had to really massage the attorney on. And, we finally were like, we're going to put 7 grand down. It's the most we're putting down. We are flipping the property. We already have a buyer. And the seller was like, "I'm just going to tell my attorney, like, whatever you guys want to do is cool." So if you get the seller on your side, usually they'll just say, "Listen, I spoke to the buyer. We're good." They'll put 7 grand down, which is a lot.
Yeah. So New York, it's wonderful.
But the spreads, I will say, the average profit in New York, even if you're wholesaling, is like 30 grand.
Yeah.
Like, that's a normal wholesale. Like, if you're making a wholesale deal less than 30 grand, it's like weird because it's so expensive there. Like, the average price is like $500K. So to make 30K is not hard.
Yeah.
Right. So that does make up for the difficulties with the attorney. And the other thing about New York I love is that when you have a deal in contract, like, it's so hard to get into contract, it's impossible to get a contract. If the seller changes their mind, you sue them, put a list pendants on the property, and like, you're going to win every time.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the stuff out here, it's like, you got to put a memorandum on there, and then the title company might not acknowledge it. So in New York, when you do have a deal, it's guaranteed it's going to close.
One thing that's interesting, so we had another guy out there, and he was locking up contracts left and right in, I think, Buffalo.
That's like 8 hours from where the city.
I believe it was Buffalo. No, it was Rochester.
Okay. Yeah, that's near Buffalo. Yeah.
Yeah. He was locking up deals left and right. And like, it took 6 months for these things to clear title.
Yeah. It's the municipals usually. So there's a municipal search in New York, this is where New York, it's very complicated, but there's a lot of towns in New York. And then in those towns, there's villages, and in those villages, there's hamlets. So basically, like, we're dealing with this now. We're doing a wholesale deal in like the New York City area, and the inspector has to come to the property and walk the entire property before they issue like a no violation certificate. So a lot of these homeowners are selling at a discount because there's violations up the wazoo.
Right.
So, you get flagged with a violation, and then either the seller has to fix it or you as the investor has to fix it. And that's what causes a lot of these deals to take a long time. Yeah. It's like, there's an open permit for a deck, there's an open permit for a roof, there's an open permit for, a boiler that wasn't installed right. And then that's a title issue in New York because that's in like one of the sections in the contract.
Yeah.
So it just causes these deals, like a quick wholesale deal is like 3 months.
Well, and that's the thing that I was looking at, is like, they reach out to us because they have financial problems.
Yes.
That needs to be fixed quickly.
Yes. Yeah. And then they get in contract and it just takes forever.
And then the attorneys kind of like do whatever they want.
Yeah. They're on their own schedule. So it is another thing too in New York is, I think the quickest deal I ever did was like 30 days, which is like a unicorn. But a lot of the sellers too, at least in Westchester, they kind of know their house isn't like super liquid in terms of like, oh, I'll get the cash in 2 weeks. They kind of know like a quick deal, probably be a month and a half. Like normal deals, like 2 months. But I
Yeah.
mean, it's better than, I guess, listing it because then it's like 2 months plus the buyer plus the mortgage contingency. So
Yeah, it's all crazy.
that's a tough market, man.
Yeah. So you started with this seminar.
Yeah.
You go do this with your buddy. Your buddy stick along for the ride
He's very successful. Devin King, I'll give him a shout out.
Yeah.
Very successful.
alongside you or separately?
Separately.
Separately.
So we're going to be partners in the beginning. We're super young and green. And then he was flipping quads, doing well. I had no other income stream. So our work ethics were a little different in the beginning. He didn't need it to work as bad as I did.
When you say flipping quads, you mean the vehicle, not quadplexes.
Yeah, like flipping ATVs. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was buying and selling those, doing well. So like the real estate was really hard in the beginning, at least. So like he was like, maybe I won't work as hard now because he was still making money flipping quads. And then I was like, dude, I need this to work. So eventually we're like, hey, let's just do this on our own and we'll just collaborate. And we've done JV deals and whatnot. And
Gotcha.
done some rehabs together.
So you go from New York to Texas.
Yep.
To San Diego.
Yeah.
Did you do business in San Diego?
I've done probably like 5 deals in San Diego.
5 deals in San Diego.
Yeah.
And
just
then
like by living there, I was like, let me just,
you've done Nevada, you've done Delaware.
I
You've done,
did a deal in Arizona. This is a random like one-off deal.
I mean, are you nationwide?
No,
Like, what is your model?
Most of our business is in New York and Delaware.
Okay.
That's like the core business. So like Brett, generally my acquisitions guy, big shout out to Brett. He moved to Delaware, and I didn't really want to do business there because I'm like, why are we going to do it? Like we're doing this in New York because like once I got the business established in Texas and I had like cash coming in, I was able to save a lot of that money and then reinvest it into real marketing in New York. And I knew there was like a higher barrier to entry. So eventually like that vacant house thing in Texas kind of dried up because there was only so many of those people, but I had money now to market in New York and I knew that area because I grew up there. So we were doing a lot of deals in New York and then he moved to Delaware and he's like, maybe we should do some deals down here. I'm like, is that a distraction? I don't know about that. So we started marketing in Delaware just because he was living there. He can go on appointments. And it took us a while. I did a flip. I broke even on it. I paid way too much for it. That's a different story. So I was like, oh, dude, I don't think this makes sense. Like we're kind of spreading ourselves too thin here. We got to learn a new market. We got a deal like the next week, made like 15 grand, closed in a week and a half because in Delaware, there's no BS with the attorneys. So we made 15K like out of thin air. And I was like, all right, let's keep doing marketing. So then we started doing some PPC, did a 35K deal, closed it in like 3 weeks. And I was like, wait a minute. We can use this Delaware market as a way to kind of keep our cash flow consistent because you can close a deal in Delaware if there's no title issues in a week if you really had to. And then he was there. So I'm like, all right, because you live there and because it's a lot easier to transact down here, let's do Delaware and keep that consistent. But we also got to keep our New York market like dialed in because that's where a lot of the big spreads are. So it's really 2 markets. It's not like I'm nationwide.
So you don't do any deals in Reno?
Not yet. I've spent 35 grand in marketing so far and I've not gotten a thing.
Gotcha.
Thank God we're in New York and Delaware. I will get deals in Reno. It will just take some time.
So Delaware is where you're getting consistent business.
Yes. More volume in Delaware.
More
now.
volume.
Yeah.
And New York is where you're doing bigger
spreads.
deals.
Yes.
So what's a big like? What is your typical spread and what's your largest spread?
Largest spread ever was 135,000
Okay.
net. And then the typical like wholesale deal in Delaware is like 20,000. Typical wholesale deal in New York is like 30 to 40.
Right.
Yeah. And a rehab is like 50.
So knowing that, I'm just looking at this as return on effort.
Yeah.
Why not go all? What's the reason for not going all in Delaware if the fee sizes are different?
Yeah.
But one requires a lot more handholding or babysitting.
So New York, we have a lot of like old leads that we follow up with. So we have a lot of just like data and like all this marketing effort from the years before that we can follow up with. And in New York, believe it or not, there's not that much competition compared to Phoenix. So like I know
totally believe that.
the direct mail there is super juicy because like there's not a ton. I mean, there's people sending mail, but it's not like, hey, I got 10 postcards. Like that doesn't happen. You may be competing with one person.
Yeah.
So just like the barrier to entry, I know the area super well. I grew up there. Like if we get an address, like I know what the ARV is in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I have good contract. Like the contractors in Delaware are a disaster so far for me. So the wholesaling is great, but we've done some rehabs down there and took a big bath on a house on it was a Philly area, but that's like the same kind of market as Delaware. And then we did another rehab we did pretty well on, but just the contractor was a disaster. New York, I have like 3 contractors that are really good and I know them. They know me. I show face there enough. So it's just like a better system if we're going to do rehabs in New York, just because
Sure.
of the contractor. So Delaware, we got to get the contractor thing fixed and then
Gotcha.
go from there.
So, and then you're doing this predominantly virtually.
Yeah.
So talk to me about running a virtual business.
Yeah. I mean, that's been a huge learning curve, up to this day. It's
Mhm.
the biggest issue, I'll say, with like a virtual team is you're not in the office, right? So like everyone has to be self-motivated to do their own work on their own, because I can't like just walk into someone's office and be like, hey, did you do this? Like, just, they're on their own, right?
Right.
So thankfully I have a good team that is very accountable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing, is like when you're not, and it's like harder to build like the team camaraderie a little bit because you're
Yeah.
not in the same office.
Right.
Second thing with virtual, from like a tactical thing, is you're locking deals up over the phone and you don't really know what you're getting sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of sellers will tell you that the house is XYZ, and then you lock it up based on that. And then, you get the pictures and it's like nothing like they said. So then you're like, well, you told me X, you're really giving me Y.
Mm-hmm.
What are we going to do about this?
Right.
Right. And you got to get into the sales at that point and be like, hey, like, what should we do about this? Like,
Mhm.
you said it needed this and it really needs that. So there
Right.
is an issue with over the phone. Like you can't put your eyes on it sometimes. Like a lot of times we'll have someone walk it beforehand,
Mhm.
but if we can't do that, you're going off the seller's word, and that can cause issues sometimes.
Is there a situation where you typically just assume it's one notch worse than what they're saying?
That's what we do now. Like in 2023, like this year, like we've made some big mistakes with that, like
Mhm.
buying deals that we probably shouldn't have because of the numbers.
Mhm.
And now, like, if they say the house is really bad, I assume it's really, really bad.
Yeah.
Like if I'm thinking the rehab's 80, I'm gonna assume it's 100,
Yeah.
right? Because like if I'm not there, like if it's 100, great, that's what I thought. If it's less than 100, then that's all
Right.
just like found money.
Yeah, because it's amazing. Like a person that lives in a house in deferred maintenance,
Oh yeah, yeah.
they think it's fine because that's their standard.
Yeah. I had that happen this morning, actually.
Yeah, right. But for you, you're like, you said it was an alright condition or it was livable. It's like, this is not livable by any stretch of the imagination. But they get used to it.
That's what they're used to.
Yeah.
There was a house this morning, a buyer walked in New York, and there's like spray painted graffiti with devils on the wall, like devils with horns, and like no sheetrock,
Mhm.
like just complete squalor. And they're living there, unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
So that's a scenario where like you'd think it's a vacant house if you drove by, but then you see the power bills in their name and it's on, and they're living there, and you're like, wow,
Right.
right? But like that house is 150K rehab at least.
Right.
It needs everything. So yeah, that's a challenge with virtual. And then, the third thing is just doing rehabs virtually.
Mhm.
Like, even though in New York we have good contractors, like, you're not there. You're not walking the job site. Like, so I really rely on the realtors who sell the deals
Mhm.
to be like my boots on the ground with that. They deal with the contractor, they deal with the permits, because I'm not, and even if I lived in New York, I really don't like going to houses, which
Yeah.
is funny. Like, I don't like going. It's just like to drive there, you drive back, walk there. It's like, I just feel like it's not the best use of time. So you have to get really good at getting like a good realtor on your team to
Mhm.
sell your deals, because they really can add a ton of value.
Do you equip the realtors with a checklist that you guys use?
Yeah, the scope of work. We give
Okay.
them the scope of work, and we give the contract. Like we make every contractor sign a scope of work,
Mhm.
and it's just clear, like how you're getting paid, what's getting done, what the timeline is, what the budget is, what the penalty is if you don't finish on time. We usually have a little reward if they finish before time,
Mhm.
and like that's documented, it's signed, and then we give it to everybody.
Mhm.
So we know like this is the plan here. And then if there's hiccups, we deal with them as they come.
So let's dive deeper into that. So scope of work. Let's talk about the initial scope of work.
Yeah.
Who comes up with the scope of work?
Me.
How are you coming up with the scope of work?
Pictures in the video walkthrough.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have the pictures in the video walkthrough from someone else's boots on the ground or from the homeowner?
Either from the realtor who's going to get the listing on the back end,
Okay.
or the contractor.
Okay.
Homeowner would be great, but some of these sellers, they're not sending you pictures. Yeah, they can
Or-
barely get on their email account.
Or they might be selective in their photos.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Okay. So let's just say the realtor contractor.
Yeah.
So they walk through, they take a bunch of photos and do a video walkthrough.
Ton, yeah.
And from that, you create the scope of work.
I create the scope work because I'll go through that whole. I like the video at the end because I can like literally just pause it and I'll go through and I'll say, all right. And the first thing I do is, are we gonna gut renovate this house, or are we gonna like do like a paint and polish kind of thing?
Mhm.
Because if it's like a decent condition, maybe it just smells like cigarette smoke or something, I'm not gonna go crazy. Like I'll keep the cabinets usually. I'll put new appliances in. So I just go through like the whole house room by room and see like what do we need to do to get it to the number that we want to sell it for,
Mhm.
right? A lot of times like people go crazy over ARV. most of the comps are not ARV. They're as is. It's like the novation model. It's like you just got to get the house comparable to where you want to sell it at. And it doesn't need to be this crazy like gut renovated number a lot of the time.
Right.
So I go through that.
Okay. So you create the scope of work. I'm assuming you have some sort of PDF or Excel sheet or something that you just kind of like click.
Yeah, I use a Google Sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just go through the item and then the cost.
Right. So you got the scope of work.
Yep.
And you hand it off to the contractor.
Yeah.
And then he gives you a bid off of it.
Well, he gives like basically I give him the scope of work and that's after he's seen the house and I kind of know his price generally speaking, but I like to take the contractor's price and itemize it out. Because if he says 50 grand, I need to know what is, like I need to itemize the whole thing out. So then he knows like the most important thing is like how much money is he getting to start? And then how is he going to get paid next? Right. So like you're going to get $5 grand to start to demo. And then after you demo, you start drywalling. And then you're going to get your next installment because a lot of like rehabbers or new rehabbers, the experienced ones don't do this. They'll just give the contractor like $25K and you might not hear from him again. Yeah. So you got to keep them motivated to keep coming back to you to get paid.
Right.
That's where I've made that mistake in the past, like just giving too much money up front and then like they're just taking their time or they leave.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't had to deal with them leaving. There's a lot of nightmare stories about that. I've had plenty of nightmares. They're like, so when are you gonna go back to the property?
Oh, it's terrible. Especially when you're not there, right?
Yeah.
I'm not even there. I can't just chase them around. I'm like, hey, dude, like, you gotta finish this job. You got $25K for me.
So now are they sending updated photos and videos to get draws?
So the contractor or the realtor will send me pictures of the work and the progress, and then once I verify that, I'll send him the
you send him more money.
Yeah,
right.
Dollar wire.
Talk to me about the language for reward or penalty. For timeliness.
So like if they finish like a week early or something, you maybe give them an extra $500 or $1,000. But like with the penalty stuff, if they like, it's just clear. It's like a clear document. It's super easy to read. It's like if you don't finish the job based on what we talked about, not new stuff that may have came up after the fact, you're gonna get a $500 per week penalty. So then like you have an incentive to keep it on track because a lot of these guys, if you pay them up front, they don't have an incentive to really deliver that product on like a good timeline. So if you're just paying them in little dribbles, they're going to be more motivated to get it done by that deadline. Because if they sign that document and it's like, if the job isn't completed by like, December 20th, $500 a day or a week, usually a week, a day would be crazy. Yeah. But that just keeps them accountable. And then like a lot of the times too, it's like, if you give them a scope of work and it's a clear document and they're like, I don't think I could do this in that timeline, before you sign it, you can, negotiate and maybe get a lower price or extend it out, but you just get the contractor set up to where you're hoping their success. Like you're hoping that they're going to follow that document. And the ones in New York generally do. Delaware, that's been a different story. I don't know what it is. Maybe something in the water down there.
What is happening in Delaware?
So bad realtor, which we won't get into, that was a problem with a bad communication with buyers. So that we solved that over the summer, but that was a nightmare. And then the contractor was very like motivated to get the job, and I would pay him in dribbles, but the quality of work wasn't good. And Brett and I didn't do a good enough job because he's local, really verifying it because we thought it was just going to be like New York. So like we did a rehab in Delaware County, PA, which is right near the state of Delaware. And like the stove wasn't plugged in. The whole house looked like crap. All like the little nooks and crannies were like, it just looked horrible and it didn't sell. And I was like, man, like this product we put out was garbage. And no one really checked to see what was going on here. And no wonder we're having a hard time selling. We all sell it for a $20,000 loss. So
do you guys have things in place where like, because what we've had to do, just because we don't want to be a burden on our finance person, was like you had to submit the invoices by Monday if you want to get paid on Friday.
We don't do that. I just, whenever I get the picture, like I deal with that myself. Like when I get the pictures and the videos that show the updated jobs and the realtor's like, hey, this looks good, I'll just pay him the wire or Zelle.
Okay.
But I only do that after I see the pictures.
Right.
And he knows that. Like the New York guy knows that. Like he knows I pay fast when you do the work.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'll pay him the same day, but you got to have that work done.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I know you said you didn't want to get into it, but crappy realtor was.
Oh man. Just a bit. Well, the first time, there's multiple offenses here, but we had a deal. I'm not going to mention any names, obviously, but we had a deal
to protect the public.
Yes, exactly. But we had a house and we didn't do a full-blown rehab because we didn't need to, because we were like, if we sell it at this price, we don't need to gut renovate it. Not necessary. Put it on the market, priced accordingly, got a buyer right away, and the buyer was just dragging us through the mud. And I was like, to the realtor, I'm like, listen, dude, like this buyer's going to keep asking for this crap. I'll pull the deal. Like, I don't need to sell. Like we took it over sub 2. So we had like cheap debt on it. And I was like, all right, like whatever. Buyer keeps asking for more requests. I'm like, some of the stuff was reasonable. Some of it was unreasonable. I did all the reasonable stuff. And then I was in Japan this summer. I got a call saying the buyer backed out and they had no like there was no contingencies or anything. The whole deal blew up over the communication. And I'm like, man, we could have prevented this like easily 2 or 3 weeks ago. Like I kept saying like, if they don't want to buy it, like I'll give them their deposit back. They can walk. I'll sell it to someone else. They killed the deal. I'm in Japan. I'm all pissed off. I'm like, this is a waste of my time. And at that price, we were going to make like 25 grand or something. So it was like a decent profit, but a lot of work and a lot of drama. So that deal dies. I'm pissed off. I'm like holding their deposit hostage now. I'm like, they're not getting this deposit back. And like, they got an attorney. They were trying to sue.
How much was the deposit?
Like 5 grand. Nothing crazy. But I was like, yeah, I'll prove a point. So
principles.
Exactly. So I told the realtor, I said, hey, it's all good, but I got to get you off this listing. So we got the paperwork squared away where they were no longer obligated to sell my house. Got another realtor involved, sold it in a weekend, no BS, no like this. And the thing is, this other realtor told Brett, because Brett lives there, what the little things we have to do to get the thing to sell like in 2 seconds without any resistance. We did those things. It was like 3 or 4 grand. Sell the property, got a better number. We ended up netting 47,000 and closed in 3 weeks. And we set the expectations right. Right. And I was just like, wow. Like the point was like, when you have a good team, like realty team, it's so much easier to sell those properties. But when you have a bad realty team, you can think you're making all this money. You can like, oh my God, I'm going to make whatever. And the whole deal could blow up.
Right.
So it was just a poor execution on the first deal. And once we learned that lesson, now we don't do that anymore.
So if someone right now, okay, first of all, I'm just thinking like you're flipping virtually.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people flip virtually.
Yeah.
A lot of people wholesale virtually.
Yeah. Wholesaling virtually is much easier.
Yeah. So you like to flip virtually, which is a whole different thing.
Yes.
But you learn lessons in vetting the realtors.
Yeah.
So now that you know these lessons, what should our listeners be doing to vet realtors before they hire one?
Yeah. You got to make sure that they sell a lot of homes locally, right? The first one I found, that was not the case necessarily. Like they definitely knew what they were doing in terms of like volume, but they weren't around that long. They were kind of new, but they still did a decent amount of business. But the main thing you want to look for is how much experience do they have? Are they selling a lot of local homes? Like you can go on Zillow and just see like all the homes that sold. And if there's like a trend on them, maybe there's like 2 or 3 realtors that really sell most of those houses. So that's the first thing you got to look for. The second thing is you got to have the realtor tell you the truth. Like you don't want the realtor like, oh yeah, this will sell at this price, no problem. Like you don't have to do anything. And then like you get disappointed down the line because like that's not the case.
The overpromise, underdeliver.
Yeah, the second realtor we worked with was like, hey, you got to do these things. And if you do these things, I know you probably don't want to do these things because, you know, who wants to spend more money after you've already spent a considerable amount? But if you do these things, you're going to be able to get this thing sold at this number, most likely. And like, they're kind of like, what do they call? Under promise, over deliver. It's having the realtor set the right expectations with you. Right.
Yeah.
And because it's easy for a realtor to say like, oh, it'll sell at this price. Because if it doesn't sell at that price, they're not the one writing the interest check.
Right.
But the good realtors want to move inventory quick and they just want to do volume. And they're not going to take a listing that's kind of like either really screwed up, that's going to need work after the fact, or they're telling you a price that's just not realistic. So
yeah, unfortunately, there are a lot of those out there. So I know we're gonna be talking about Millionaire in 7 years, but before we get to there, so how I first heard about you was not as a wholesaler.
No,
right?
I know where this is going.
Yeah, the very first time I heard about you was you were the advanced sales coach.
Yes.
In the Midwest Revenue Group?
REI Sales Academy.
REI Sales Academy.
Yeah.
Right. So you go to one of John's events.
Yep.
And once you finish this event, there's another level.
Yep.
Upsell in some way.
Yep.
Right. And in that upsell, you got to work with Greg.
Yes.
Right. And Greg was more the way it was explained to me.
Yeah.
Was like more the corporate, not corporate, but more the, if you're running a sales team.
Yeah.
Right. So you go to John's event.
It's more for the masses.
Yeah. If you're learning how to wholesale, you're getting into this business, okay, you go to John. But now that you've experienced John and you're ready for next level training, you go to Greg.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how you got into that position at such, I mean, you're 28 today.
Yeah. I was like 23, man.
Yeah. I mean, I heard about this 5 years ago.
Yeah. That was crazy. I had no facial hair or anything, no bags under my eyes. Yeah.
Yeah.
God.
So talk to me how you got into that position. That's got to be an interesting journey.
That was an interesting story. So
yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. So basically, one of the problems I had in the beginning was obviously no money, no experience, but I did not know how to sell formulaically. I was like just going on appointments, winging it. I remember I got kicked out of this guy's house one time.
You got
Like,
kicked
literally
out?
got kicked out of the
All right.
house.
Okay. So before I continue, why'd you get kicked out of the
Yeah,
house?
so Pearl River, New York. It was like November, God knows how long ago. And I remember the guy was in pre-foreclosure, called off a bandit sign. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I didn't know what a deal was. I'm like, this is a deal. It's got to be a deal.
Yeah.
I brought my mentor, Frank Sanchez, with me. I'm like, why don't we do this? You come on this appointment with me. I'll wholesale it to you directly. Just watch me get the deal on, like, with the seller like accepted, because he can't sign contracts in New York.
Yeah.
Go to this guy's house. He's in his pajamas. He's like waiting for me by the door. I walk around the house. He's just pissed off. I had no idea what I was doing, just winging it.
Pissed off at you or pissed off at him?
Pissed off at me, pissed off at the situation. It's like 12 o'clock. He's in his pajamas, just pissed off guy. And this is like an area where like there's a lot of just angry people in like Pearl River, Rockland counties. It's like expensive.
Okay.
So I remember we walked the house and I'm trying to like ask him why he's like, I just didn't know what I was doing. I had no system in place. And I remember I went to go sit down to like pitch the offer, and I sat down and he was standing up above me like this, like looking at me. And then once I got a couple words out of it, he's like, just get out of here. Just get out of here right now. Like, I don't need this. This is a waste of my time. He just kicked me out of the house. I walked out of the house and I was like, Frank, I'm sorry, man. I don't know what the hell's going on here.
Yeah.
And I sat in my car and I was like, I need to learn how to sell because I have no system in place now. When that's going, or right after that, I remember I went on Facebook and I saw this.
Hang on.
like,
What did Frank say?
Frank was like, man, it is what it is, man.
Okay.
You're not going to get every house. But I just didn't feel comfortable not knowing what I was doing because I would.
You didn't. But did he have like, here's what you did wrong, or he was like,
He was just like, hey, man, it's all good. Like he didn't want to. He knew I was pissed off. I was like really like just kind of like embarrassed about it. But anyway, so I'm in my car and I'm just like, I need to figure out how to sell. Like there's got to be a way to do this that works. Right. And even the truth is, he probably was an unqualified lead that was never going to sell. But I had no idea even. I didn't even know how to identify that.
Yeah, you can't filter it yet.
Yeah, I had no idea. Like I probably would have DQ'd him on the phone or something. So anyway, I'm in my car, come back home, and I'm on Facebook, and I see like this real estate investing sales training with like niche of a niche product.
Right.
And I'm like, what the heck? Like, I didn't know that existed. So then I look into it. I watch some YouTube videos. I buy his training, John's training at the time. He sold it to Jerry ever since. And I joined the training and I'm like, I'm going to do everything this guy says to do. Like I needed to learn how to sell. That was like the skill I needed to fill. Like that was my pain point because I knew how to get leads at that point. And I remember I joined his training. It was online training and I did everything he said to do. And I remember he used to give his Voxer access. So I'd Voxer him like 3 times a day, like with scenarios. Cause I was like taking it seriously. I would study, I'd listen to my calls. I'd record my calls. I'd write notes down. I'd go on appointments and I would just like immerse myself in this. And then John, he would do these live calls and a lot of people would be on them, but no one would want to volunteer. Like I would want to volunteer and like ask him questions. And like, there was like, 50 people on these calls and I kept volunteering. Like this young kid in New York, like who barely had a business at the time. And I kept volunteering and people would, be like, oh, this guy, Greg, keeps contributing. And then John started to realize that. And then after some time of doing that, he's like, hey man, it seems like, you understand this stuff pretty well. And I was also buying more houses because I,
You're
using
using
the sales
system,
training, right? I was DQing people and I was getting better deals. And he's like, hey, would you ever want to work together? And I was like, maybe. Like I've been in this training for like 6 months. Like I'm trying to build my business, man. And he's like, yeah, I know, but I get a lot of people who reach out to me and they want like more training and I don't really want to do it. Like I just would rather have you do it. And I'm like, hey, I'm just getting started, But anyway, long story short, he was like, what if we launch this like sales management training where, people pay us, a monthly fee. We train their sales teams. We listen to their calls. They just get like the material kind of like more customized to their needs. So like, he's like, I'll get the clients and we'll like do like a split of the revenue. And like, I was like, okay, sure, man. Like, let's do it. And then like, he got like 3 clients right away. These were like big investors. I think like, Ren was there. Like a lot of these like big Eric Brewer.
Yeah.
And I was like training their sales teams as like, a fairly new guy.
Yeah.
And I like, by doing that, like I got really good at the sales training.
Of course.
And then I was like, you learn a lot when you teach. So then I became like the go-to sales trainer guy, like kind of like out of my butt, honestly. And, I started helping them and like they were getting more deals and like they were like Voxering me, being like, hey, I did what you told me. I got this contract. And what do I do with a seller? And I was like helping them and then I was helping myself. And it just became like Greg is John Martinez's protege. And then it got me in a lot of rooms that I probably wouldn't have been able to get into. Right. And I was still super young, right? And I was still building my business. So that's how I got involved with that.
It's fascinating to imagine, right? Because you got Eric Brewer up here.
Yeah.
You got Ren Bartlett up here.
Yeah.
Right? But they weren't up here.
Yeah.
When you started working with them.
No.
Right? So like you were part of their journey.
Yeah.
They were part of your journey.
Yeah.
Right. And like we've all gone these different directions.
Yep.
But it's just funny to think like
crazy, man.
See what they've accomplished and like you were involved in helping their team build out their
sales process. Yeah. It is crazy because I remember like the first time I did a one-on-one sales call, I was so nervous. It was a Zoom call. I remember I moved. No, I don't even know if I was in No, I wasn't even in California then. I was like, there was like 7 people on a Zoom, like the whole sales team, the owners, and it's me. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to be on the thing for an hour and I need to make sure I add a lot of value. And I was nervous. And then I got used to it and I understood it and I had a system for it, right? So like eventually that wore off and I wasn't nervous, but I was just like terrified because I was like still kind of new at the time. And for people to pay me to like sales train them, even though I probably knew more than them, like the teams or whatever, but it was just like a weird experience and it got me super, super uncomfortable. But like once I got used to it, I knew how much I could help them. And it really helped me in my business. Like I got to give a shout out to like the sales academy or whatever. Because like that got me in rooms and it got me known through being associated with that. And that really helped me.
Well, like I said, that's how I got to know you.
Yeah, that's how you,
Right. So when I saw you as a case study, I was like, oh, that's cool because I know Greg.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's a helpful thing.
And yeah, just the best way to learn something is to teach it.
Man.
And have yourself get picked apart or have them question you.
Yeah.
You know, because there's a couple things here that resonate for me, right? So like I've said, like I've had an incredible blessing, being the sales trainer in CG, right?
That's amazing.
Having the best in the country question you, and having to come up with a good answer really forces you, to level up. And the other thing too, you're talking about you're always raising your hand, like who's this kid in New York who keeps asking questions, right?
Yeah.
I've always been that guy. Doesn't matter what room it is. Anyone have any questions? Yeah, like anyone want to volunteer? Like I'm always the guy. And the worst part for me is I do the same thing in Kung Fu, right? And so like there are times where I get slapped in the face and get whatever, swollen lip. But it's like I want to learn. Like I will be the dummy for everyone else if it makes me better faster.
Exactly, man. And that's how I was able to get good at selling and negotiating is literally by like being the sales trainer and like just having to learn it by force. Right. And like just when you do a lot of those calls, like you start to really figure out what works and what doesn't work. And I remember like after doing that for a couple of years, I was like, I can help anybody who has leads and a sales problem. Like, I know what their issue usually is. And because I had all that experience like stacked up in a short period of time, I was like, I had a lot of confidence and that gave me a lot of confidence. So now when I train Brett, like he's getting all that free basically, it's like, cause he's had all that knowledge and experience compounded and compressed. And now I was able to help him and he's, been tremendously successful working with us. So that was, I always like forget it. Oh, one more thing. I forgot to mention this. The real way it got big was I would take my recordings and put them in the Facebook group. And then people were like, this guy's putting his own calls out in the public to get scrutinized and no one was doing that. That's what really like got John's super attention.
So having been in this game for a while now, do you know what it is about you that is willing to put yourself out there? Because there's only a handful of people that will do that, right? I would put myself in that category where I'm willing to put myself out there to be torn apart, right? Have you figured out what it is? Like whether it's PI, disc, MyBricks, whatever it is. Because like that is, I would say, one of the things that if you can find someone who's willing to be vulnerable to get torn apart, we'll get better faster. So if you can hire guys like that, that'd be great.
It really,
So do you know what it is? Because I think that is a magic, that's like a magic ingredient for success.
I think it's understanding fear. Like, and I just was not scared to have people think I might have sucked at sales back in the day because I knew that like, if I put myself out there, and it's fear, but then it's looking at the upside and then the downside and comparing the two. Like the upside is I'm going to get way better. People are going to know who I am. People are going to be able to give me feedback. The downside is someone might think I'm a clown. I know I'm a clown, right? Like I know I'm a knucklehead. So
worst case is they
already think what is probably true, right? So like it just never bothered me. Like I was like, what's the worst thing that happen? Someone's going to think, oh, he sucks at selling. Like whatever. Maybe that's the case. How do I get better, right? Like how do I get better? So I never really let it. Like the fear never really got to me because I knew there was so much more upside than downside. And then I think also like when I was playing hockey, before I got into real estate, I was getting bullied a lot. I was a New Yorker in Boston. Everyone thought I sucked, which I kind of did. So like I was kind of used to like getting resistance and having people kind of like give me crap. So like when I got into real estate, like I was just desensitized to it. Like, I just never really like let it bother me. Like getting rejected by a seller just never took it personal.
Do you know what profile you are on the predictive index?
Strategist. Yeah.
So high A, low B.
Yeah.
Lower B, not necessarily low B.
What is a strat? I took that like a year ago. What is that?
Strategist is someone that is generally independent, wants to win, strong ego.
Yeah.
Right. So rejection is not a problem.
Yeah.
Right. But there are a lot of people with high A's that's not enough to put themselves out there. Lower B, which is don't have a lot of requirement for social approval. Right.
Sounds like me.
But then the other thing is a very low C, which means you're driving for results now.
Yeah.
Not the most understanding person on the planet, right? Like that's the big thing.
That's why Brett doesn't let me speak to half the sellers, because I'm just a maniac. Like I just don't care. Like I care, but like I'm so like there have been sellers who are like, I will not speak to Greg. I will only speak to Brett.
Yeah.
Because I'm just so objective based.
Yeah. So you want results now, and like feelings aren't a consideration. Your car didn't start this morning. Too bad, right? Like you were supposed to be here at this time.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That is funny.
So that's the driving component, and then the other part with the strategist is the high D, which is the detail oriented.
That sounds like me.
So you can plan and execute, and I know this profile really well because that's my wife, right?
She's a strategist.
My wife's a strategist. Stephanie Butters is a strategist. Jason Medley, founder of Collective Genius. Frank Cava, like. Some of the best operators are strategists.
Yeah.
And it's that I want to win. I want to win now.
Yeah.
And here is exactly what has to happen for us to win.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm more like, I want to win. Doesn't really matter to me when it happens, right? I just want to win.
Yeah.
Right? Like if we win next week, we win next month, we win next year. Like, I just want to win, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, the time frame doesn't matter, but I'm horrible with details. So like I can understand things at a really deep level. But once I understand the details at a deep level, I don't care about the details anymore.
Yeah, I'm good with details.
But a strategist is like paying attention to all the details. And I'll give you another example. Like, my wife will ask me a question. I was like, why do you even think about that? But it's a valuable question.
Yeah.
It's just a question I would never think about because for me, it's like, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting because I remember taking that test and I was like, I thought I was going to be like captain or maverick. That's what I assumed. And it said strategist. And I was like, I like read through and I was like, oh, that makes sense. So I am like very like with the rehabs or with like the marketing, like numbers, like everything I just have like systematized and tracked. Like everything, like just like I like that. Like I really enjoy, or like something I really love doing is like analyzing a deal to see what we can pay for the house.
Yeah.
Like taking the ARV, like just doing all like rentals. I love that. Like, oh, how do I BRRRR this thing and have none of my money in the deal?
Right.
I could sit in front of a spreadsheet and do that all day.
Yeah.
Because I see that's like the path to get my goal.
Yeah. So strategists, generally excellent operators.
Yeah.
Right. And then I think the big thing though, going back to the other part though, was the high A, low B, which is I want to win. I don't care what anyone thinks.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it has to be a combination of that, whereas captain or mavericks generally have a higher need for social approval. They're unwilling to be vulnerable. Not to say that all of them, but just less willing versus the low need for social approval. And I have very low need for social approval. So I just put it out there. It's like, if they think I'm an idiot, like that's their problem.
It is what it is. They already believe that. Like there's nothing I can do to change it.
Right.
Like I think as long as you believe in yourself, it sounds cheesy, but like unless it's like your spouse or something, you guys want them to like you and your family. But besides that, like who cares?
And that's that low need for social approval.
Yeah. It is what it is,
So you just mentioned a moment ago, BRRRRing without your own money.
Yeah.
So what are we doing here?
That is really what got me to the success level I'm at is buying and holding rental properties. I don't have a ton of them, but like the equity stack you can do in New York with like how expensive the properties are and like getting them at a discount. So BRRRR without any money is basically buying a property at a wholesale price. Generally that needs work. Doing the rehab, just like you would flip the house, but instead of selling it and making a big spread, you refinance the property. You refinance it and then you keep the property and then you just put a renter in there and keep it on the shelf.
Is there anything you're doing different than like the commonly preached BRRRR model?
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to Augie Penev, Phoenix local, because he coached me on how to do this. So a lot of people talk about the refi as a cash out refi, which is you have to wait usually 6 to 12 months to do that because they're going to give you cash on the refi. What he taught me, and this works way better, is you buy a property at a discount, you borrow all the purchase money, you borrow all the rehab money, you borrow all the closing costs that you would need in the form of the first mortgage from it has to be from a private lender. Can't be hard money guy's going to give you 90%, right? So you got to do a private lender. But instead of, and obviously this is assuming you're getting a good deal at a discount, that you can refi at 70% LTV, right? It's a little technical here. But instead of waiting 6 to 12 months to do that cash out refi and paying the interest and just dealing with the bank, you do a rate and term refi for what you owe on that first loan. And you could do that in a month. Like the last one I did it refied in a month after the rehab. So like you can basically keep your money moving a lot faster. You're not going to get cash, right? Because it's not a cash out refi, but you're also going to have no money in the deal if you buy it right, because the bank just wants to make sure you're just getting your basis recouped basically. So that's what's really made the difference for us.
So
in terms of getting
something
rentals.
else, might want to vet this with an attorney. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something else I've seen other people do is putting a second note on the property, right? So you put a second note on the property,
Yeah.
and the second note is another company that they own,
Oh, interesting.
right?
Never
So
heard
it's
that.
like, here's the purchase money,
Yeah.
here's a lien,
Yeah.
and then when you do the cash out, when you do the refi, it's not a
Yeah.
cash out refi.
It's a
You're
rate
just
and term.
reimbursing your lien
Yeah.
that converts to cash
Interesting. I might have to try that after I speak to an attorney.
after you speak to
Yeah.
an attorney, right?
That is smart.
Right.
It's all about basically having your money move quickly.
Yeah.
Right? Because these cash out refis take a long time.
Yeah, if you wait 6 months, it's no good, but you had the cash in there.
Yeah. You
Then,
get your money out right away. I mean, the last one I did, I think I made 10 grand, like a wholesale fee basically, because I got it so cheap. And I was like, this is crazy. I called my mortgage guy. He's like, yeah, we'll do that. I'm like, you'll do the whole thing? He's like, yeah. I'm like, all right. Where do I sign? It was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think, like, yeah, I think that's awesome.
I like the BRRRR. Like I said, I've done sub 2, I've done owner financing. Those are great and they can work. But I like the BRRRR because it doesn't really deviate you from your core business or our core business of buying houses at wholesale prices, just different exit strategy. Like the sub 2 and the owner financing can be great, but that's a whole nother business. You got to understand a lot more technical stuff, and it's definitely great.
Well,
but,
explain the nuances.
well, I mean, a sub 2, like there's problems with insurance. You got to know how to do that. Like you got to, if you're taking over the subject to loan and then there's the insurance part of it, and you get a second insurance policy to cover that, if there's a claim on the property, like it can be hairy, right? Because like you might have fraudulent insurance or something. Like there's a lot of nuances with that. And then the seller's credit's on the line. They're still kind of in bed with you until you get that loan paid off or sold. Owner financing, I love. I'm doing an owner financing deal right now, 0% interest, but I got to put like 15 grand down. So like you can't really, and I could get private money, sure, but like I don't want to be over leveraged. So I think creative deals are great if they're still fundamentally good deals, but I see a lot of creative deals out there that are creative deals, but they don't make any sense.
Yeah.
If that you know what I mean? Like
it makes total sense. It's it's creative for the sake of being creative.
Yeah. I say this all the time on Instagram. Like just because you can buy a creative deal doesn't mean you should do it. If it makes sense from a deal perspective, sure. But just because you can buy a deal sub 2, like if the entry fee is like $50K, like just putting $50K in a deal what's the cash on cash return on that?
Well,
How
what's
much
the
equity
point?
do you have?
You might as well get a mortgage.
You might as well get a mortgage, right? Exactly. That's what I say.
Yeah. There's a lot of it's like the behind the back pass that's unnecessary.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, for
You
me,
just
it's like
go,
you just see this behind the back pass that goes out of bounds. Like
yeah,
a simple chest pass or bounce pass would have
gotten the deal
sufficed.
done. Yeah,
Right. But you're being creative unnecessarily, adding more risk
yeah,
to the process.
exactly. And another thing I'll say that I've looked at and passed on deals is like, if you buy a sub 2 deal with no equity and there's a problem, you don't really have an exit unless you're willing to write a check. So like people don't look at that either. Like the sub 2 deals that I've done have always had equity, and we've generally flipped them because we didn't want to be in bed with the seller. But like I see a lot of deals like, the mortgage balance is $350, the house is worth, $360. It's like, I don't know about that.
Well, unfortunately, there's just gonna be a lot of people that are gonna have to learn some lessons.
Yes.
Like
Yes. I agree.
I had this property that was a rental, bought it with some friends, and I had no idea that you can do $20,000 worth of damage in a couple of months in a rental property.
I've seen that.
Right? I had no idea.
I have seen that.
And we didn't budget for it.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so like this lady moved in, she paid us 3 months up front. We're like, okay, that's cool.
3 months up front.
Yeah.
That's
right. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, that's cool. So you say it's a red flag. For me, I was like, that's awesome.
Oh, that's a red flag. Yeah.
Right?
In
So
cash?
Uh,
They faked you in physical cash. I'd be really running the other way.
yeah, I don't remember that part.
Yeah.
But I do remember that she was, what was the word I'm looking for? Not co-signed, but there was an organization that was like, hey, like we're supportive of her, blah, blah, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, apparently she didn't know that you don't have like your animals live with you at all times. And so we took a house that we bought distressed, where it was clear the previous occupants, don't know if they were owners or tenants, but the previous occupants were on meth
Oh my God.
because there was a lot of like do-it-yourself projects in the
Yeah.
property, right?
Oh yeah. Breaking Bad.
Right. And so we rehabbed the property, made it rentable, livable. And it's the first tenant. And even though there was 3 months up front, it was supposed to be paying every month starting on month 1.
Yeah.
And like month 1, like, hey, what's going on? And then after that, we had to start the eviction process. And after 2-3 months, we get her out and we get into the property. We're like,
Squalor.
what is this?
What happened? How does this happen in 2 months?
Right.
It's crazy.
And so $20K to get it rent ready for the next tenants.
Yeah.
Right. And fortunately, this time we all have the ability to do this.
Yeah.
But you're buying a property with no equity
Brutal.
and you're cash flowing just a few $100 a month.
Not worth it.
And you get one of these scenarios.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a mess. It's a mess. That's the thing with the creative. I think they're great if they're good deals, but if a new person doesn't have the resources to do that, now not only are they going to suffer, but then the seller's going to suffer because their name is on the loan. So you just got to really know what you're doing and understand the fundamentals of a good real estate deal, whatever that means in your own world.
Yeah.
And then make decisions based off that.
Yeah.
So I think the BRRRR is just more straightforward. If you're good at, like we're good at getting deals at discount and flipping them and wholesaling them. So to do the BRRRR doesn't really screw up our business model that much because we're doing the same thing. We're just not selling the property.
What's your price point when you're on your BRRRRs?
Generally, they're like under 300K in New York. Yeah, because above 300, it's very hard. Because in New York, the taxes are high too. Like some of the taxes are 10 grand a year.
Being in New York, I believe a reliably blue state.
Very.
Any challenges with non-paying tenants?
I had a tenant. It took me 2 years to do an eviction on. He got out earlier this year. 2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
And it still pencils out.
Yeah, I got the house for 125. It's worth 280 right now. I put 40 into it, but still it's a good deal and a great tax write-off.
Okay. Well, that's for me the thing.
I like the tax game into rentals. That's what really makes a lot of the times. That's what really gets me excited to do the deal. It's like, oh, I can cost seg this thing and offset a lot of my active income.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2 years, man. 2 years doing multiple attorneys, cat and mouse game. I walked in that house after they got out, and it was a complete disaster. Like they left moldy food in the fridge. I almost passed out. Like I opened the fridge up and I was like it was bad. Never saw the property until that point. Too.
Yeah. I don't know what was going through your head that you opened the fridge. You don't have to learn that lesson once. You only have to learn that lesson once.
Yeah.
But you did it. And
yeah. It was I will say the New York people are like, why do you do properties in New York for rental? That's just like one of our main markets, but the eviction process there is brutal. Like if you're lucky, it'll take you 6 months. If you're lucky, usually it's a year.
Yeah. I can't even imagine having any rental properties in blue states. So, so 28 now.
Yeah.
You started at 20 years old.
Yeah.
So millionaire in 7 years.
Yeah.
So last year.
Yeah.
So how did you become a millionaire in 7 years?
There's two things. It was saving the money from doing the active deals, like putting up a lot of money in savings and then using that savings to either invest into flips to make like double or triple what we make wholesaling it and or just put in the bank to have for rental properties.
Right.
And then doing the BRRRR and then getting the equity and stacking that equity up. So it's really saving money to put into flips to then make more profit and then putting the rest in the bank account. I always have like a big cash reserve and then buying properties, doing the BRRRR, and then having that equity build up. So that's really the actual like strategy on how I did it.
So is it more on the active income side or is it on the appreciation?
More on the active, for sure. The appreciation helped and the equity I got from BRRRRing helped, but the active income has always been the driver for me to be able to do the rentals.
Sure.
You know, because I have to put 50K into a rental, for 6 months. Like if you don't have that cash sitting around, like can't do it.
So really then the focus, even though you're buying the rentals and this and that, which is also helping with the tax situation, is having a successful active income business.
Yes, that is critical. I see a lot of people try to buy a rental property. They have like no business. And I'm like, dude, that's not going to help you. Like in the beginning.
So then in the 7 years you've been doing this, what would you say? Like, did you have like a slow run up and then like a few really good years? Has it been steady, steady Eddie? Is it like, are you, like I had a pretty good run during COVID.
Yeah.
Right? That stimmy money was great.
Yeah.
Like, was there, like, what would you attribute a lot of that to?
So the business has always done better. Like the next year has always been better historically. Like we've always done better the next year. So that I've always saved like more money every year and I've paid myself more money as an owner every year because the business has done better. But the biggest thing in terms of like the money management that's helped me is the profit first system. Every time we make a deal happen and there's money that comes in, that money gets strategically allocated into different buckets: tax bucket, savings bucket, marketing bucket, paying the overhead bucket. So all the money that I get in from the business gets managed really strategically, kind of like my profile.
Yeah.
It's like systematized.
Right.
So like if we make 20K, I'm going to put like 5K in savings. I'm going to put, $4,000 into marketing. I'm going to use that money in a very strategic fashion.
Yeah.
And that helps me save enough money to where when I have a deal I want to burn, I might have to put money into it. I can do that because I know if I put that 50K in, I'm going to have 100K of equity. So I'll 50, you know what I mean? So that has really allowed me to do it.
So this is so Jason Medley's been on the show, right? And what he was talking about was making money is a skill.
Yes.
And everyone that's come on the show has learned that skill. And there's a lot of people in this country that are listening to the show that have learned this skill probably at a really high level.
Yeah.
Keeping the money is a discipline.
That is so true. It is a discipline.
It's a completely different skill set or a different attitude or perspective.
Yeah.
Right. And so you mentioned Profit First, and we had a good friend, David Richter, right? It's Profit First for real estate investors. Right.
Yeah.
So I know you kind of broke it down, but for those that are not familiar with Profit First, can you break it down at a more fundamental level?
Yeah. So it's basically like a money management system because a lot of business owners do a lot of revenue, but it's just like all over the place. Right. So like what I do, I'll just tell you what I do. When we make money as a company from a deal, that whatever it is, 10 grand, 20 grand, 30, doesn't, it's the same process. That money gets allocated into different bank accounts. And then those bank accounts hopefully grow over time. So like if we bring in 20 grand, I don't just take 20 grand and put it in the operating account and pay myself no salary. Like that 20 grand, well, the commissions get paid, all that stuff. What's left over goes for me into a savings account, like just to save. That's like investment stuff, like saving money to do deals. And then I put money back into marketing so we can get more deals coming in. I put just enough money to pay for our overhead for like the op expenses. And then I put money in one of my personal checking accounts for myself, just spending money. And then money into like a bills account for like my bills that I have personally, like, car payment, whatever. So all that money just gets managed. So like anytime there's an expense, it gets paid from a certain bucket. So you can just, and then most importantly, you pay yourself first. I pay myself that savings account draw first.
Yeah.
And that's what goes in the savings account. And then that's what's used to invest and, create the success.
So you do distributions per deal, not twice a month?
Per deal.
Per deal.
Yeah.
That's a little different of a wrinkle.
It is a hairy wrinkle. I need to, I have.
Look.
I do.
It works.
Yeah.
Right?
I pay myself a decent salary at the end of the year, but it is a little hairy.
Hey, again, who am I to question it?
I just went off the book, man. I went off Profit First. I'm like, I remember reading that book a long time ago before I had like the business to where it is now. And I was like, I'm just going to start doing this from day one.
Yeah.
So it's like just all gets managed up.
But it requires discipline, right? And so particularly because you flip, right? Like I've seen this happen so many times where if someone has a flipping operation, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, which that's kind of like what we dream about. But at the same time, the cash reserves never grows.
Yeah.
Because it keeps going into the next flip, into the next flip. There's earnest money
like
out there.
a never-ending treadmill.
Yeah, there's money to have the contractors paid. There's money for hard money payments. Like it's just always going out. And so it's like
you're cash poor and accounts receivable rich.
Right.
As a flipper. But we like to wholesale to offset that.
Yeah.
Because we got to offset that because that is true. Like the cash conversion cycle and the cash flow itself, especially if you get hard money, is brutal. But the wholesale is like pay the bills. Right?
But it's fascinating because I never, not never, but it was, I want to say like 5 years ago, was the first time I heard this concept that you can go broke being successful.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. You can.
But it happens to flippers all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So although, you talked about making a bunch of active income, I would attribute probably more to keeping a larger chunk of your active income and being disciplined with it. Because again, it's so easy. Like there's this idea of this hustle culture.
Yeah.
Right. And put it all back in and keep going.
Yeah, no.
And
never done that.
I believe that for a long time in my career.
Yeah. Just putting the money back into the business.
Putting back in your business. No. Right. And it's like, how do I put it? It's, it's never ending. You can always put more money into the business.
Yeah, it's always welcoming your money.
Yeah.
From day one, I've always paid myself a lot because I want this business for the lifestyle, right? Like, and if I just keep feeding this business, it's going to get more deals, but like that habit's going to grow as the business grows. So like from day one, I always started just saving the money on every deal and like just doing it in that, like literally following Profit First, like almost maybe to a fault sometimes where it's like, I literally do it like every time. And it's like, that was just all I've known. Right?
Well, it's in alignment with the strategist.
Yeah. And
Profile.
I have a whole spreadsheet that like
Yeah.
maps everything out. It's funny. Like every deal for the last like 3 years is just like profit first. It's like all the buckets. And I
Yeah.
have all like the chase accounts, like the little accounts for all like the different, it's just funny. How
Yeah, no, this is what we do. This is the way we do it every time. We don't deviate.
I don't deviate. No. And
Yeah.
it's like when a deal closes, I'm like, cool, I'm going to spend 20 minutes managing that money, chopping it up.
So for you guys watching, Profit First for Real Estate Investors by David Richter.
Yep.
Or you can go and watch the podcast we did with David Richter on Real Estate Disruptors.
Yeah.
But I
That's
commend
great.
you for doing that. You know,
Yeah.
it's a discipline that most people don't like to do, especially finances. Like I
Yeah.
can say until I hired a bookkeeper,
Yeah.
it was always like, I'll do my books this weekend.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll do my
right?
books this weekend.
Right.
And it was probably, I would go like 9 months at a time. From, like,
Without doing the books.
without doing the books. And they go in there, it's like, oh, what was this expense? Right? You got to
Wait,
go
how
through,
do I itemize this on QuickBooks?
you got to check in the email. Like, okay, you got to do the search for that dollar amount.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You got to do Control F. Yeah. You're
Yeah.
like, what the hell?
Right.
Yeah.
And so, what you're talking about is beyond bookkeeper, but like most people that listen are probably in the Captain and Maverick profile
Yeah.
and don't like looking at their books. So again, you know, the secret, like you just kind of shared it here, and it's such like, it's kind of like a boring secret.
Yeah, right.
Right,
It's
so-
not exciting. Like
not
moving
exciting.
money into your checking account is not gonna like get you to jump up and down. But I know like that system has worked to get me to where I want to get to.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like I've seen that as we've grown, it's just gotten better.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, this is how I want to set it up because that's allowed me to buy the rentals. Like if I didn't have that money in the savings account personally,
Mhm.
it would be hard for me to buy that because we go, oh, I'm stealing from the business. It's like, no, like that money is used to buy your investment property.
Right.
I like there's a great example. Like this was like last year. Best rental I bought so far. 1-bed condo, Newburgh, New York. Not a great area, if we're being honest. I had a bunch of money sitting from deals, and I got the thing at a decent price,
Mhm.
$46,000 or whatever. It's probably worth like $75 at the time. It's gone up since. That property pays me $600 a month net in my pocket. There's no mortgage on it. But like that money was saved by being strategic with every single deal up until that point.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like and I've seen that and I'm like, oh wow, that made sense. Like I'm glad I had that money sitting around from being strategic with profit first
Mhm.
to be able to buy that property that's just going to pay me forever.
Yeah.
You know?
So again, like the big reveal might feel anticlimactic, but that's really all it is.
That's
It's
all it is.
make a lot of money,
Save it
and keep it.
and keep it and then use it to buy properties.
Yeah.
Or like before I started buying the rentals though, I was like, I would use that money savings to buy fix and flips
Mhm.
because I'd have to put $50K into these deals with a hard money line. And then we started getting private money.
Mhm.
But like that $50K needed to be spent and I had it so we could do that deal. And instead of making $20K wholesaling it, we made 60 grand flipping it.
Yeah.
So then like that $50K I put into the deal all in made me $60K.
Yeah.
So I got my basis back of 50 plus I made my 60.
Mhm.
So like I've always like really liked kind of like managing the money and like
Mhm.
look, it's just like weird. Like, cause people know me as like a sales trainer, but I really
Yeah.
just like looking at numbers. You know,
So
it's pretty funny.
let's break this down because there's a few different things, right? So between wholesaling and flipping.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you make more per flip, and that's obvious, right?
Yeah.
The trade-offs is the cash conversion cycle,
Brutal and flipping.
right? So cash conversion cycle, more brain damage and
More
and
risk too.
more risk.
Liability. I have
Yeah.
a lot of friends with slip and fall lawsuits at their flips.
Yeah.
A lot of friends.
So more risk, more brain damage,
Yeah.
more, and you have to make payments,
Yeah.
and you got to deal with contractors.
Yeah. And towns and violations and permits.
Yeah.
We just keep going all day.
Right. So for that instance, why do you flip?
Because a lot of the times it just makes more sense to do that flip, even though there's a lot of garbage associated with it.
Yeah.
So like, for example, if we can make double what we would make wholesaling it, flipping it,
Mhm.
and it's not a crazy project, I'll flip it.
Mhm.
Unless there's a cash flow problem.
Yeah.
Like if there's a cash flow problem and like we know that flip revenue is going to come in 5 months,
Mhm.
but we, maybe this a little tight on deals or whatever,
Yeah.
we'll probably take that wholesale, get the cash in the door to get the marketing back out.
Mhm.
But it really depends on the deal. But a lot of times, if it's like we can make 25 wholesaling it without a doubt, or 50 plus flipping it, and it's not a huge rehab, and we
Mhm.
don't need to pay the like whatever, we'll do the flip.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the key here is not a huge rehab.
Not a huge rehab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like for me, yeah, we'll wholetail it. Again, I hate flipping.
That's the best model, honestly.
I'll wholetail it.
Yeah.
It was double, we'll wholetail it.
Oh yeah.
Right.
No brainer.
But it was like, but actually, I would take that back, right? It was 20 versus 40. I probably will still take the quick 20.
20.
I'll probably take the quick 20 versus like the longer 40. Just
Yeah, just moving the money,
cash conversion cycle
Yeah.
for me.
getting the momentum. It's big for the team too. Like
Yeah.
people don't want to wait 3-4 months to get.
Yeah,
paid.
they get paid faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found too, like a lot of the deals, like at least before the market changed, like before the rates went up, you could make almost the same amount of money wholesaling these deals to these sucker investors
Oh yeah.
because like people would buy houses. Like I remember I did a deal in San Diego. It was like I made 70 grand. The flipper made like 20. And I was like, what the heck? Like, cause like there was like no one cared because the rates were so low. Like everyone wanted to buy houses. And then
Well,
the
everyone
rates
was
went
betting
up.
on the appreciation.
Yeah. And like now it's a lot different. Like it's still like a lot of people say like, oh, it's hard to find buyers now. I haven't had an issue really finding buyers for wholesale deals now if it's a deal. Right. That's where like the problem is a lot of people are like they were selling these garbage deals to maybe funds or whatever, but now it's changed. So you have to actually have a deal and then you haven't found an issue with getting buyers.
Yeah. So what does your life look like right now? You're talking about a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I think you were saying you were in Japan and one of your deals
Yeah.
kind of went crazy. So what you're doing this for lifestyle? What's the lifestyle you have right now?
I like being able to like not have to physically be anywhere. Like I just moved to Reno from San Diego and like wasn't an issue because I was working remote anyway. So location independence is big for me. And then like the ability to just like kind of travel at will. Like I went to Japan for a couple days, like 4 days. Literally went to Japan for 4 days, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not really worth the.
It was a lot of travel for 4 days, but been there, Singapore, Dubai. Like I just like being able to set the business up to where like virtually I can do the operation, right? And then I can travel like I'm going to see my family for the holidays or for New Year's.
Yeah.
Right. Coming here for this podcast with you. Like I don't have to physically be anywhere. So like the location independence and the whole virtualization of the business is really what like attracted me back in the day. And that's why I wanted to do it in Dallas to like prove the model. But it's just not being tied anywhere. Not having to be tied anywhere, like having to go to an office or having to go on appointments, right? You can't virtualize that. Like if you're going on an appointment, you got to be local, right? Having to go see contractors, like I just don't like doing that. I'll do it once in a while in New York if I'm there, but I really don't enjoy it. And having that location independence just gives me a lot of happiness because I feel like I just have that freedom.
So the number one thing for you is location independence.
Yeah. And being able to work wherever. Yeah.
So, I know I asked you this question before, but for everyone here, San Diego to Reno.
Yeah.
How did you come to that conclusion?
Yeah. So I actually went on a ski trip to Reno and I was up in like Lake Tahoe. It was really nice. And then I went back to San Diego and I met my girlfriend and she's from there. And then, I kept going there more and more. And like, honestly, San Diego like is a great spot, but like I was kind of getting tired of it because I wasn't from there. And I was just kind of like working out of my house all day. I had some fun here and there, but like I just was kind of ready to move on and like, kept going to Reno and I was like, and it's a better business state for taxes too. That doesn't hurt.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, so I've lived in San Diego and I loved it there.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time in Tahoe.
Tahoe's great.
Not Reno. I think I've only been to Reno once, but went to Tahoe a whole bunch of time.
Yeah.
But it was really only just go snowboarding and skiing, right? It was like day trips.
I was just doing that this week. It's great up there.
Yeah, go from Sacramento, drive an hour and a half.
Yep.
Tahoe. I was like Kirkland and like
Kirkwood, Heavenly, North Star. Yeah.
And then go back.
Yeah.
Right. Fun times. So.
I like Reno too, because Reno's like, it's small, but it's got everything you need. Like San Diego was always so crowded. Like if I wanted to go somewhere, it was like, oh my God, 35 minutes. Reno, it's like, I can get to the airport in 5 minutes. I can get to the gym in 5 minutes. I can get to the grocery store in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it has everything. Right. So it's pretty cool there. It's like, they call it the biggest little city in the world. It's like has everything you need, but you don't feel like you're in this like big city. So
interesting.
Nice.
What is your why?
It's a good question. I would say my why is doing what I want with who I want, whenever I want, and just having total freedom. And just having freedom, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I got in this, like I didn't have like some crazy why when I got into this business. Like I always just wanted freedom, the ability to do whatever I wanted.
Right.
And this business has been, able to allow me to do that. So that's like my why. And like giving back. I like giving back and helping people financially.
What do you give back to?
So this year did a lot of charity stuff for Christmas. Was able to help a lot of families out who didn't have money for gifts. We're able to contribute to some of those organizations and, get Christmas gifts for people that couldn't afford it. Right. Yeah. And this business is a vehicle that allows me to do that. Right.
Absolutely.
So it's cool to do that.
Yeah. What's your biggest struggle today?
Man, I would say the biggest struggle is really knowing when enough is enough. Not saying I have like some ginormous business, but just being like, do I want to double the business or do we want to keep doing what we're doing now and maybe like even net more money? Like it's just, that is probably my biggest struggle. Like not knowing like where I want to be at from like a business standpoint. And then just being like, all right, do we want to do this? And like the big theme of 2023 was like optimize before expand because everyone talks about growth. And I see a lot of people, they grow and they get in big trouble. So I was telling the team this year and hiring, I had a hiring issue this year where I really had a bad team member and it was issue for a while, but really getting really good at what we're doing now and making sure like we're going really deep versus going like wide with like more volume or another market or something like that. Like being masters of our craft and knowing what our core business is. Like our core business is not flipping or wholesaling. It's getting deals at a discount. That's our core business. If we can do that, then we figure out how to make money on the house.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people like deviate from that. Like if we can get amazing at getting deals at a discount from sellers, we can figure out the rest.
That's the single most valuable
That is the most critical thing you can do to anyone. It's getting deals at a discount.
Right.
That's what you want to optimize for, not subject to deals or owner finance deals. You get the deals at a discount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people lose sight of that.
I've lost sight of it before, man.
Mm-hmm.
I have to keep checking in because it's like, that's what makes the money.
Right.
It's getting the deals.
And the single most valuable skill is being able to find the motivated seller and locking that contract up.
That is it. If you can do that, you'll always make money.
What was the situation with the bad hire?
Hired a lead manager from a referral and, thought she was going to be decent. But that's a tough role too, because you're talking to sellers on the front line and just was never the right fit for that role and constantly kept training and there's never improvement. Didn't know when to fire and then just kind of kept letting it go. And then the ball kept getting dropped and we kept training.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't steer a parked car. So after enough time, we were like, all right, we got to just do a performance improvement plan again for the third time. And then if it's not there, we're going to just have to get rid of her. But then we're going to have to go back to Brett being on the phone a lot. Right. So just the lesson I learned from that was don't just like, if someone really stinks, get rid of them pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Like we let that linger for 7 months. It's terrible. Even for them too. It was like, we did them a disservice by keeping them on that long. That's how I thought about it.
Why do you think? Because you know this, like logically, you're aware of this.
Yeah.
But you still hold on to. And look, I'm giving you a hard time.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of this as well.
Oh yeah.
I've held on to too many people for far too long as well.
Yeah.
So why do you think we do that?
I think we do that because we don't want, like, it is inconvenient to hire somebody else and go through that process. So it's like, I might as well keep them on for now until they're really bad because I don't want to have to go back and hire someone else out because that's a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
That was my logic behind it. But then once I got rid of her and I got my new guy, he's way better. I had to go through that process again to hire somebody. But now, like, I'm here doing the show and I don't have to constantly be like, oh, did you call it lead back or whatever? Like, it's just, you get the right person, you can teach them the skills. You can't teach the skills to the wrong person. I've learned that the hard way, right?
Yeah.
Like, you cannot teach the wrong person skills.
I've had someone call me out, right? It's like, oh, so you would coach someone else to get rid of that person and you still got that person? It's like, okay, you're right. I'll go get rid of that person.
Yeah.
Right?
I've found too, like with getting people, it's like Brett, for example, he's basically a partner at this point. Like, he's an internally motivated person, right? So I can't control that. But once I gave him the skills, he took off.
Right.
But if you hire someone who is not motivated or they're not a good fit for a lead manager or whatever it is, you can give them all the training you want. They're going to not be successful.
No. Yeah. The term we call it was have to come with batteries included. Right.
Never heard that.
Yeah.
Batteries need to be there.
Yeah. If they don't come with batteries included, there's nothing you can do.
Big trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you stay motivated?
How do I stay motivated? I don't know. I just feel like I've been doing this for 8 years now. And it's like, I like the results I've been getting so far. So if I want to keep these results or get better results, I got to just keep doing what I did.
Yeah.
Right. And keep getting better. And I just feel like this business too, like if you compare it to like, if I had to have a corporate job and go to the office every day, like I look at my situation and I'm like, yeah, there are some bad days in business for sure that drive me nuts. But like at the end of the day, like this is a pretty good setup.
Right.
This is a pretty good setup. Work from anywhere, got to deal with crazy sellers a lot, but at the end of the day, like you always can compare your situation to a worse situation and reframe it and then be grateful and staying like I try to stay very grateful. Like just what am I grateful for today?
How do you measure success?
I measure success probably by it's just taking what my goals are and seeing if I'm making progress towards them every day. Right. It's not like a dollar amount. It's not like a deal volume thing. It's like, what are my goals and am I taking steps towards those goals every day? Because if I do that over time, I'll hit them. Keep it simple.
Real simple.
Yeah.
What's your superpower?
And after we had that PI discussion, I think it's probably more the strategy, probably like the strategy behind the plan. It's like not just being like, oh, like big picture person. Like I like to actually like take that big picture and really like map out how we're going to get there. And that's something that gives me a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Right?
that's probably my biggest thing. Because if I was more just like big picture, I'd probably be like all lost in the. But like, I like the details, and I like being able to say like, if we want to do this goal, this is the marketing we have to do. This is what the conversion rate needs to look like. This is the systems we got to have, and like I can see that system will get us to the goal. So it's like believable.
Right.
So I think that's something I like to spend a lot of time on. Like I've been spending a lot of time planning 2024
Mm-hmm.
and just like reverse engineering the marketing, reverse engineering the sales process, looking at our conversion rate, looking at our channels. What channel converts the worst? What channel converts the best? Why is that? Like I like to just sit there and like analyze it. And that
You like looking at dashboards?
yeah, spreadsheets. I like Google Sheets better than Excel too. Google Sheets.
Google Sheets is good.
I take it all over with me. It's on my phone. It's on my computer.
Google Sheets is good. I can't knock
Yeah.
Google Sheets. We use the Google Sheets way too much.
Yeah, me
Right.
too.
But
Everything's a spreadsheet for me.
it's I guess say as far as even though we use QuickBooks,
Yeah,
we still use Sheets to do some calculations, this
Yeah.
and that, and then compensation, right? We just download from Stripe and Kartra, and we just plug it into the Sheets, and then we have the compensation.
right?
Here's how much the commissions were.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Do it right
it's-
through Zapier. The whole
Uh,
system. And persistence. That's another superpower. I think in the beginning it was like just persistence. Because in the beginning,
well,
it's
yeah,
like
9 months to your first deal.
persistence. What do they say? Persistence breaks resistance. It's like if you just keep like, but persistence is tricky though, because you can persistently do the wrong thing and go absolutely nowhere with a bad strategy.
Right.
But if you have like this business works, like there's enough people having success wholesaling and flipping, like it clearly works. So if you persist with the right strategy, that's where you're going to find success. But if you
Right.
just consistently do the wrong things over and over and over again, you got to change your strategy.
Yeah.
I remember
Bangor-
reading that in Perry Marshall's book. I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
that makes so much sense.
Which book?
80/20 Sales and Marketing
Yeah, that was
is my favorite sales and marketing book.
it's a fantastic
That is
book.
like the best marketing book. Oh, it's so good.
It's interesting he calls it 80/20 sales and marketing because it was a marketing book.
It's 80/20 marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
But it was an
Yeah.
incredible book, right? And we had a conversation yesterday during our annual planning, and someone brought up billboards. Like, look, we have to go in order of direct response,
Yeah. Billboards are like the last. on the
Billboards
list.
last.
Yeah.
right?
First
We-
one's PPC.
yeah, PPC, TV, direct mail. We have
Yeah.
to go on beyond the point of what's it? It's the point where it's no longer effective. I can't remember the exact term.
Diminishing returns.
Diminishing returns.
Yeah.
We have to get past the point of diminishing returns
Before you try another channel.
before we try billboards.
Yeah.
Like
Billboard.
I
Especially in
appreciate you
Phoenix,
guys saying
man.
that we want to do billboards, but let's max out all these other things.
I'd
first.
rather do TV than billboards.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
Right?
billboards.
last, and Perry talks about that
Yeah.
in the book. It's a great book.
That's a
for-
great book. If anyone wants to, like, if someone just read that book 10 times and implemented it, they
Mhm.
would really have their act together.
Yeah, that was a great book. So Perry Marshall's 80/20 marketing. What's your biggest regret?
My biggest regret is probably not keeping a lot of these houses I've flipped and wholesaled. Disgusting. I look at, like, there's a example, Monroe, New York, where I'm from, born and raised, like, very expensive area near the city. I sold a flip top of the market at the time, 375. That was in 2021. It's 525 right now.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
I bought it for 160.
we had a
So,
property that we had to sell. So that nightmare property with the tenant with the 20K in damage.
yeah.
Right? So
Disaster.
in order to move that property and
Yeah.
get it off our books because it was not good,
Yeah.
right? And it's before the market returned. So
Oh, this is somewhat recent.
no, I'm saying like in 2011, 2012.
Oh, that's when the market was really bad. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's
Wow.
like, okay, like we're just gonna get
We
rid
got
of
to
this
just get rid of this thing. Yeah.
Right. In
just-
order to get
just
rid of
kill
this
it.
property, we had to sell our property in Austin, which is consistently cash flowing.
Oh,
And I look at this property in Austin now.
yeah.
It's like, oh man,
That thing went up probably 200-300 grand.
more than that.
Oh,
Right.
Austin is a hot market.
Yeah. Like if there's any one property I wish I kept, it would be
It was
that,
Austin.
that Austin property. Yeah.
Yeah, it's brutal. Like, I mean, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, I needed that money to grow my business. So it's like I could say that for days. Like, oh, I wish I didn't, the 200 and something deals, I wish I kept them
That
all.
one we could have just give
Yeah.
that one to the bank. That one we were trying to like get it off the books and just get it
to
out.
the bank.
We could have just give it back to the bank and kept that Austin
Jesus.
property. Right. But you don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. And
Yeah.
I think the rentals too, that when you get in a bad situation with a tenant, it's just, you just want to get out of there, man.
Yeah.
It's just painful as an owner.
What book have you gifted more than any other?
The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy.
Yeah.
I still have 10 copies in my office, just giving them out to people.
Yeah.
That's the best book
Why that book?
because it's so simple
Mhm.
to execute on. That's the truth. It's if you just read that book and execute it, that's it.
Yeah. So you're not really like inspiring, like, oh, like, he's got this big secret. It's like, no, you just do the work.
Just do the work.
Just do the work.
But that book like makes it like permission for it to be that simple.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like choices, habits, momentum, associations, and then the force multiplier effect.
Yeah.
That's that whole book. That's like the 6 chapters. But it's like, you just do those and implement it. Like that will give you success in any business.
Any business, right? And like Darren Hardy, like I think of all the coaches, right? Like I think I've given him the most money, right?
Dude, he loves getting money. He's great at it.
He's great at it.
He's great at it. I did his,
Business Masterclass?
No, not that. What's the one before?
Hero's Journey?
Yes.
Yeah.
That one. That was good.
Yeah. Yeah, I did Hero's Journey with Augie.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, so Augie and I, we did it together. Yeah, it was Augie, Jason Lewis, and a few other people.
Yeah.
We went through the Hero's Journey together. But yeah, like it's simple. Everything you said today was simple.
Yeah.
But not easy.
No.
And it requires massive discipline.
Massive consistency.
Yeah.
That's why I love like listening to like Brian Tracy, Jim Rohn, Darren Hardy. Like those guys just keep it real.
Yeah, the
Earl
classics.
Nightingale.
Yeah.
Like that's easy stuff. You just execute that and that's all you need.
But it's so much easier to find the magic pill off of social media.
Yeah, right. The AI bot hack,
Yeah.
Chat GPT special. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish it was that easy, but it's not.
It's not.
But definitely the compound effect.
Yeah.
That's the gift I've.
All right. I want you
most.
to think about a message that you'll leave all the listeners with while I make a couple of quick announcements. Let's see here. So it's 20th. So this will be coming out, I think, potentially beginning of the year.
Sweet.
So right around that time, we will have launched our new podcast, Close More Sales. So we're launching a new podcast, Close More Sales. I think by then the website should probably be up, closemoresales.com. And then we're going to have you back on.
Yes.
Because that's the podcast where we talk only about sales.
In person or virtual?
I would think in person would be better, but that's totally your call.
Okay.
We don't have the same requirements for that podcast, at least not yet.
Okay.
We will, but not yet. But I think, it'd be awesome to have you
Easy
back
flight
on.
from Reno, man.
Yeah.
Hour
It'd
and
be
a
wonderful to have you back on for our Close More Sales podcast. So keep an eye out, closemoresales.com. We saw Pardon the Disruption, Certainty Talks. Make sure you check out those shows as well. What are some last thoughts you want to leave all the listeners with?
I would say that it depends on where you're at in your journey, but this business, if you just give it your all and you commit and you study your craft and you master it, it can give you the life of your dreams.
Yeah.
Simple.
Simple.
Someone
wants to get a hold of you. What's the best way for them to do that?
Probably 2 ways. Greg at velocityhousebuyers.com or my Instagram at Grego_37.
Grego30, is that your hockey?
My skateboarding nickname from middle school.
Grego.
Grego, Grego. Yeah.
I love it. Perfect.
That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for
Awesome.
coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next
Shout
time.
out to Steve Trang. Jump on the Steve Trang. We real estate disruptors.